can use that. That's all you.
Right. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
I now convene the April 10th, 11th, 2025 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. The Anglican Open Meeting Act for teleconference meetings requires that commission members who are at the meeting via teleconference to disclose that any other individuals 18 years of age or older are present in the room at the remote location, the general nature of the member's relationship with any such individual. Are there any disclosures for members attending via Zoom?
I have no disclosure.
Oh, you know what?
Michael?
Let me move to another room.
Hang on, we can't hear you.
One more time.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Can I move to a secure room?
Yes. Thank
Okay.
you, Michael.
Let me do that now, and I'll log
And
back
then we'll
in.
come back. Okay. Commissioner Litt?
I have no disclosures.
I have no disclosures.
I have no disclosures.
Thank you. Thank you, commissioners. Commissioners who are participating via Zoom must be visible at all times on camera. Please log off Zoom if you need to leave the meeting and log in when you are ready to join the meeting. If you experience broadband or internet connectivity problems while participating in the meeting, that would be remedied by joining without video. You must announce the reason for your non-appearance when you turn off your camera. We'll now take roll call. Recording secretary, will you please call the roll?
Annette Brown. Here. Catherine Williams Brown. Here. Jose Cadiz.
Present.
Carol Cotton. Here. Juan Cruz.
Here.
Christopher Davis.
Present.
Anna Marie Francois. Present. Quino Shire.
Present.
Jarrell Hill.
Present.
Bonnie Clark. Present. Ira Litt.
Present.
Luca Mencias.
Here.
Monica Martinez. Here. Ring Parbury.
Present.
David Simmons. Fang Yuzoff. Here. Michael Dilatori. We have a quorum.
Commissioner Brown, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
We pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I would like to remind everyone about the meeting procedures before we get to today's agenda. This meeting is being conducted at the Commission office and via teleconference. We have commissioners participating from the Commission building and also via Zoom. The public has the option to attend the general session of the meeting at the Commission office or participate remotely through Zoom webcast or US toll-free phone numbers. Meeting room technology includes built-in microphones, speakers, cameras, and monitors. Please note the ceiling microphones are always on and will pick up everything that is said at all times. So please be aware that said in this room will be captured on the archived recording of the meeting. Therefore, side conversation should be kept to a minimum, if at all, while in this room. Members that are participating by Zoom or are connected to the Zoom meeting, please mute your laptop speakers and microphones and mute yourselves on the Zoom video. Commissioners attending the meeting via Zoom that would like to speak, please use the raised hand feature. Because this is a hybrid meeting, we will need to conduct each vote by roll call. We would like to ask the members of the public who attend the meeting via Zoom and would like to make public comment to check their Zoom identification. Their Zoom identification is the name used when logging into the meeting. It is important that the Zoom identification is accurate so we can call on you appropriately during public comment. Next, I will cover the public comment procedures. The committee chair will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item and ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Individuals who attend the meeting at the Commission office will need to submit a request to address the Commission card to the meeting moderator. The meeting moderator will notify the individual when it is their turn to speak. At that time, the individual will be able to approach the podium and share their comments. Individuals who join the meeting via the Zoom webcast will need to click on the raised hand icon to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on the item. The moderator will notify the individual when it is their turn to speak by calling their Zoom ID. That time, the individual will be prompted to unmute their microphone and will be able to share their comment. Zoom ID name used by the members of the public to join the Zoom meeting will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Individuals who join the meeting through the U.S. toll-free number will need to press *9 on their phone to inform the meeting moderator that they would like to speak on the item. The moderator will notify the individual it is their turn to speak by calling their phone number and will allow them to unmute their telephone. At that time, the individual will be prompted to press *6 and will be able to share their comment. Please note, only a partial phone number will be displayed to the public when the individual provides public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker to speak on a particular agenda item. I ask that you keep your remarks brief and focus on the particular item you are speaking to. Please note this meeting is being recorded. After the meeting, archived audio and video will be available via the Commission's website. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge Commissioner Hill. This will be his last meeting representing the AICCU. He has taken a new position at the California Community Colleges. Although he has only been with us for a short time, I greatly appreciate his input, the knowledge and experience he brought to the table. We wish you all the best in this next chapter of your life. Would you like to say a comment or two?
Oh, thank you all. It's just been really fun. I was hoping to keep the commitment, but since I had an opportunity to move over to the community college system, it looks like the role may not be available. I saw Catherine in the room. But again, I still will work in teacher prep in some capacity with a lot of my colleagues as I move into a new role. But it's just been a really wonderful experience, and I hope to, at some point, it's not a goodbye, it's just see you later in a different capacity, but I still want to be involved in this as much as I can. So you all have been really gracious with your time and support, and it's just been a wonderful experience, and I hope to continue on in some capacity. So I thank you all.
And again, we wish you the very best. Commissioner De La Torre, do you have any disclosure?
No disclosures.
Item 2A is the approval of the February 2025 minutes. We'll now open for public comment. Public comments are limited. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do I have a motion to approve the February 2025 commission meeting minutes? Commissioner Moncrief. Is there a second? Commissioner Davis, thank you. Any discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote? Each member, please remember to respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Brown. Aye. Cardenas.
Aye.
Darrell Cotton.
Aye.
Juan Cruz.
Abstain.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Abstain.
Peter Quinn Shire.
Aye.
Bonnie Clark. Aye. Ira Lev.
Aye.
Mencius.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Yuzoff.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The next item is 2B, approval of the April 2025 agenda. We have inserts for agenda items 1A and 2C. Colleagues, I would like us to start the educator preparation committee no later than 10 a.m., please. So let's keep that in mind during our reports. We'll now open for public comment. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments? Public comment period for this item is now closed. Do I have a motion to approve the April 2025 Commission meeting agenda? Yes, Commissioner Martinez, is there a second? Commissioner Davis, thank you. Any discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Jeanette Brown. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Gerald Cotton.
Aye.
Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael Delatorre.
Aye.
Peter Quinn Shire. Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lear.
Aye.
Mencius.
Aye.
Monica Martinez. David Simmons. Fang Yuzoff.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 2C is approval of the April 2025 consent calendar. We will now open for public comment. Public comments are limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any items they would like to discuss? Yes, Commissioner Brown?
I would like to pull, number 1.
Yes,
Alvile Roberto.
Yes, Commissioner Cruz.
Like to pull number 19.
Anyone else? Yes, Commissioner.
I would like to recuse myself from number 76, Amber McGiffin, and I would like to pull number 40, Stephen Masters.
I'd like to pull item number 44, Joshua Medetis.
And I would like to pull item number 35, last name Lambert. Do I have a motion to approve all remaining items on the consent calendar?
So moved.
Commissioner Cruz. Commissioner Macias, second. The recording secretary, please call for the vote.
Jeanette Brown.
Aye.
Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Gerald Cotton.
Aye.
Juan Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael Delatorre.
Aye.
Peter Quinn Shire.
Aye.
Bonnie Clark.
Aye.
Ira Lear.
Aye.
Rupert Mencius.
Aye.
Monica Martinez.
Aye.
David Simmons.
Abstain.
Fang Yuzoff.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Good morning again, colleagues. Happy National Bilingual Multilingual Month. Let us continue to celebrate our diverse communities. Spring is here, and with all the turmoil in our nation, I feel a mix of joy, hope, anxiety, and resistance. A colleague recently shared with me the statement, "Joy is a form of resistance," and I'm trying really hard to embrace this thought in my personal and professional lives. I find great joy in my first granddaughter, Skylar Rose, who is now 14 months. She's taking her first steps and walking with such confidence and determination and such joy on her face as she makes her way around the house. I find hope in the resistance our field is demonstrating at the national, state, and local levels, despite that. As you may be aware, last week, the Supreme Court issued an order in the emergency appeal filed by the current administration in the case brought by 8 Democratic attorney generals, including ours, regarding the termination of TQP seed grants. This opinion reverses the temporary restraining order that was put in place by the lower courts and allows the administration to go back and terminate the grants in the 8 states. A similar case was filed by the American Association of Colleges of Teacher Education, AACTE, the National Center for Teacher Residency, NCTR, and the Michigan affiliate of AACTE. And this case is still subject to the preliminary injunction that was issued in Maryland on March 17th. That ruling has not directly impacted this case, at least for now. And a shout out to our Department of Education leadership here in California for questioning the authority of the current administration's recent orders regarding state DEI policies and practices. While such efforts may be considered small wins, they are wins nonetheless as we resist such actions. And I find hope in the words of Clint Smith, author of the book, How the Word is Passed, A History of Slavery Across America. Dr. Smith was a keynote speaker at the AACT annual meeting this past February. In his book and during his keynote, he described the collective failure of memory we are experiencing as a nation and the critical importance of our history, which includes slavery and racism. Our work as educators is to ensure that our histories are not erased, and he emphasized the importance of teacher and educator agency, despite of their prevailing winds. When asked during the public engagement with him, where do you see hope? He responded, "It is our collective responsibility to continue to build a just, and I would add a caring world, because of those who have come before us and for our children and our grandchildren." He advised us to continue to chip away at the work and not step away from our commitment to provide a high quality and diverse workforce for our nation's children, and that's what I'm choosing to do. Turning to our agenda, I just want to highlight two items. As is true every April, we have the Super Teacher Supply Report, which provides a bit of good news, which we could all need. As you've read, fiscal year 2023-24 marked an increase in the number of new credentials issued since 2020 and 21. There was an increase in all new teaching credential types, multiple subject and ed specialists, and there was an increase in teaching intern credentials. And finally, I'm looking forward to our discussion regarding item 3C, draft recommendations of the work group to review the design and implementation of the teaching performance assessments. Commissioners, as you have read, our task will be to provide feedback to the work group so they may bring their final recommendations to us in June. I joined the work group in March and was again impressed with the care and thoughtfulness in which they are all approaching the work. My gratitude to co-chairs Mandy Redfern and Ursula Estrada-Reveles, and to our CTC staff who are supporting the process. Executive Director Sandy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate very much your words of inspiration and realism. Thank you. And good morning, everyone. It is wonderful to be at this table with you again. We only get to do this 6 times a year, but I look forward to it eagerly every time. And welcome to all of our community that attends this with us. It wouldn't be the same without you. And to the team over here, I'm grateful for all of the work you've done to get us to today. It's going to be a good meeting. I'm excited for the discussions we're about to have. I have an announcement I'd like to make as well, and that is that Erin Sullivan, please stand if you would. Erin. Why don't you just come down here and sit at the table? Our own Erin Sullivan has been appointed to serve as the director of the Professional Services Division. We've all gotten to know Erin in the day-to-day in and out of work, but I have more information that I'd like to share with you about Erin, because this is one of those moments when you give the bio for this extraordinary woman who's coming into this leadership role. So Erin has been with the commission since September of 2001. During these last 24 years, she has served as a certification analyst, a staff supervisor, a contracts analyst, a government relations consultant, an accreditation consultant and administrator, and most recently as the interim director of professional services since September of 2024. The breadth of roles and depth of experiences that she has pursued and leaned into have brought her to where she is today, the director of professional services. As an analyst in the certification division, Erin served individuals at all points in the process of becoming future California educators. As these were the days before email and the internet, she spent many hours, good Lord, it was this century, but only just barely, right? Right, exactly. As these were the days before email and the internet, she spent many hours in one-on-one phone conversations with prospective educators, assisting them with understanding the various licensure requirements and navigating the process of demonstrating required competence. In certification, it was necessary to balance the need to serve these constituencies by applying targeted knowledge and expertise of statute and regulation while still meeting statutorily mandated timelines for application processing. In this role, Erin leveraged her ability to be knowledgeable, concise, and straightforward so that problems were solved and issues addressed effectively and efficiently. During her time as a staff supervisor over the Commission's intake unit, she got the first opportunity to develop her management skills. She was excited to be able to hire entry-level staff, some of whom still work for the agency, and provide professional development to facilitate upward mobility. After promoting to contracts analyst in the fiscal division, insight into agency budgeting protocols and worked with agency divisions to secure contracts for everything, examinations to IT services to accommodations for accreditation site visits. The training and development for this work provided her the opportunity to work with laws and regulations, and it was here that she saw that she had an aptitude and keenness for that type of work. Thus, when an opening came in the Commission's Office of Governmental Relations, she jumped at it. Her time in that office brought vast and invaluable opportunities to work with the legislature, develop relationships with important constituencies such as CTA, AXA, CSBA, EdVoice, and public advocates, and work with the media, developing relationships with education reporters. These experiences were another critical part of her professional development, and she applied the knowledge and skills gained in that role in her work as an accreditation consultant and an administrator in the Professional Services Division for the last 12 years. As interim and now permanent Director of Professional Services, her relationships and essential qualities have come full circle. In Erin's own words, she is pleased and humbled to recognize that she is seen as a trusted and dependable resource to many people, both inside and outside the Commission. More to come, but this is a wonderful opportunity. This is just the beginning of the next thing. The other thing I'd like to just report to you, I mean, the staff, this particular year, this is a year for the Commission. I just have to tell you, there are so many things that are moving rapidly and without any stoppage to deadlines that have to be met. You may recall that Senate Bill 488 set some of those deadlines for us. Deadline for the retirement of the RECA examination that ties to having available a literacy performance assessment, which we're going to hear about today. And Heather Kennedy from our performance assessment team is here. And so it's Julie, good to see you. Glad you guys are here to do that. To talk about one of the most recent performance assessments that they've been working on, which is the math cycle for the pre-K 3 credential. Talk about that field study and how that's moving forward. But they are also right at the moment working to get every other performance assessment that we offer up to speed and fully kind of reset, if you will, based on what we've learned in the last 2 years of building the literacy performance assessment. It's a huge amount of work. This summer is the deadline. They're going to be training and assessing and scoring for the next 6 weeks without fail. And that team really deserves great support from all of us for everything they're doing to get us from here to there. Another significant portion of SB 488 was the requirement that we certify every institution and preparation pathway to a teaching credential in literacy. That's somewhere around 250 distinct program pathways. Cheryl Hickey, as our administrator for accreditation, and Erin Sullivan and Miranda, the team has been working tirelessly with our institutions of higher education to undertake this enormous task this year. And we are delighted to present on your consent agenda, which you've just adopted, the first 14 institutions representing 31 programs and 65 pathways that are approved. They're certified as of today. That is, that's exciting. The effort to get here has been significant. Certifying a program against our literacy standards is a different kind of accreditation activity than we normally undertake. And it has required, it's a three-phase process. You'll recall we walked through what the whole process was going to be, where the staff did the initial review to make sure everything was ready for a set of reviewers to come in. And so 94% of the programs, 223 out of 238, have completed phase 2, and those remaining are within 6 institutions. In phase 3, which involves external reviewers, we have 116 programs at 51 institutions that have started phase 3 review, which includes those on the consent calendar. We've had 48 phase 3 reviewers from the field coming in, and we are working, I think, 4 days a week. We are having review sessions to get everything done quickly and on time, and the turnaround with our institutions of higher education who are feeling the pressure as we come to the end of their semester or their quarter. And July 1 is our deadline for having this done. This is a tightly orchestrated dance of give and take of information and clarification and getting to certification. But the folks who have stepped up to be involved in this, including our consultants, the consultant days, 68, most review dates were facilitated by 2 to 4 consultants each day. So our consultants and professional services have just, I mean, it's all literacy all the time, except when it's accreditation or grants or the other myriad things that are in folks' workload. So it has been an extraordinary effort, and I wish that there was some way for me officially to sanction a month in Hawaii for those people. I can't do it, but I really hope they make good choices as they get to the end of this process and bring in June the remaining institutions and program pathways that need to be certified so that we can turn into, I mean, really hit the reset button on preparation for teaching literacy and assessment in that space that moves away from our long-held reading instructional competence assessment into a literacy performance assessment that is embedded in preparation and benefiting candidates from the direct and immediate access, preparation, and opportunity to demonstrate their skills. So there's a huge amount of work going on in certification and professional practices as well. We are at higher than ever levels of credentials that we're processing, and that has a ripple effect throughout the agency. And we will find an opportunity to shed some light on that at a future date. But right now, this moment of getting our first program certified is a really important moment. And then, of course, the other big items, there's some other big items on your agenda, including teacher supply with good news and the report of the RDI TPA workgroup. Thrilled to have Mandy Redfern here. I don't think Ursula is here with us today. It's Mandy and Juliet Wallleitner, and the staff recently came off the panel and onto the staff to help us close this and get it to this point of closure, where we're going to hear from some very interesting ideas about how we can hit some resets in the performance assessment space. So wishing you all a great meeting, and thank you for letting me shed some light on some of the intense work that is underway in the agency.
Executive Director Sandy. Do any commissioners have items to report? Commissioner Brown.
I'll try to keep it concise because I know you have a timeline, but I just wanted to start. I want to start local and then go bigger for just a moment. In my area, we just had on April 5th a stand up for educators that hundreds of people came to with signs and support. Both our state senator and our congressperson was there, but also what was so wonderful is there was a whole panoply of people that came up and spoke, and at least 2 of them were from the community colleges, which was great. And also locally, Redwood City, to address what they describe as the dire shortage of credentialed early childhood educators, announced that the county is taking an innovative approach to attracting people to the field, and they're taking $4.5 million in funds from their local Measure K sales tax to help pay for tuition, textbooks, internships, and other supports for people in early childhood education. And I just think that really supports what we do in terms of quality teacher preparation. I also wanted to just say sort of, it's more at the state level, but there's been 2 or 3 really interesting, Tri-C did a Spring Institute, which was in supporting the neurodivergent child, and the state conference, which is at the, coming up like today and tomorrow and Saturday, is the annual AEYC conference is entitled Diverse Voices, Joyful Choices. And I'm happy to say that we're going to be making a presentation because they want to know what's good, what's hard, what's coming up in early childhood education, which I think is great. Also, this is statewide, but it's just something to know about. The California Early Childhood Mentor Program just completed its spring coordinator forum with a lot of interest and support of what we're doing here at the commission. So those connections are really great. And then Stanford University is doing a couple of things. The Graduate School of Education, and Ira, I hope I'm not stealing your thunder here, is doing a Spring Institute where they bring state legislators from across the country to talk about what's new in education. And one of the presentations will be about early childhood education. And then there's also Stanford University is also sponsoring a Principal Institute in Excellence in Early Education. How to become an inaugural Stanford Early Childhood Education Leadership Fellow, which will really, as they title it, 3rd grade proficiency starts in preschool. So just wanted to let you know some really good things add to what we're doing are happening statewide, and that is joy and hope as well as anxiety.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. Other commissioners? Oh my. Yes. Okay, Commissioner Cruz.
Well, welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here today. We all know that we all live very busy lives, and to be here, like to be present and to be in these moments, I think it's sometimes difficult because our phones are always buzzing and there's always these notifications and we got these emails going on. But we're all here together, right? We're here in community. We're here to get connected and we're here for purpose. And so I want to share a little bit about my experiences that I've had over the last month and a half, I think, since we've had our last meeting. It's been a lot, and it's been a lot for good reasons, and really to draw connections and back to the sense of community. And so we talked about joy and hope and anxiety and even resistance. And start off with, I was part of what's called WACAC. I brought it up a couple of times, the Western Association for College Admission Counseling. And they had a legislator day. We were able to come in, and I think for me, the best part was I was able to bring some counselors. And the counselors are my former students, right? And here they are talking about counseling and the work that they do. And they shared the work that was happening in Stockton particularly. But then we had counselors and admissions folks from higher ed that talked about the work they were doing across the state. And we thought that was very valuable work to share what we're trying to do to help students at the community college level and at the university level. And so on that day when we were walking over to the legislator's office, there were students, and the students were trying to get more money for visual performing arts. And it was great to see all these young middle school and high school students being part of that change, right? And doing it in a productive, positive way. There was music everywhere, and it's just really uplifting. And so that was one of the events that I got to attend. And then I got to attend an online session with CSAC, California Student Aid Commission. And they were talking about all the work that's been going on across the state to help raise financial aid, and also the realities of how our financial aid rates have dropped dramatically, especially amongst our mixed status families. our mixed status families are, they're not applying. I am one of those students, right? As part of mixed status families growing up, where there's this fear, real fear to apply for higher ed. And one of the things that really resonated with me was this one young lady who was on the webinar. She was a college student. And she talked about how she was, and she is, her parents' retirement. She is going to college to change herself as generationally and also to be the retirement plan for her parents. And that really stuck to me because that is true, right? For many of our students, that is even true for myself. And so the thing is that our students are trying to do better. And as leaders, what are we doing to continue to create this change and this opportunity? And then I recently got to go to West Point. So I got to go visit our academies. I was selected, and there was about 50 of us from across the nation, because my area is an area that doesn't send a lot of students to academies. At West Point, if you've ever been there, it's super dynamic. We talk about community college being free. When you join one of the academies, also free education. Yes, you have a commitment and service afterwards, but it's an opportunity for many of our students. And talking to several cadets, I found cadets from the Outgrove area, from Stockton area, from across California and across the nation. These were young leaders who had so much to offer and so much hope, but also their perspective, right? I got to visit one of their international relations courses, and the professor was dynamic, and the students were even more dynamic because they were really thinking about the world and how they're going to impact the world. And so to be able to go to an institution like West Point just reminds me of how we're able to bring those best practices, because they're using this method called the Thayer method, Socratic method, right? That we use and we're allowing kids to critically think, to analyze, and to problem solve. And that's what we can create for our own students, and we are creating those opportunities. And then I also got to attend the National School Counseling Leadership Conference, and there was leaders from all over, superintendents, administrators. It was mainly for higher HR folks and school counselors. And they just talked about the sense of how we need to do something together. We can't just sit back and let things happen to ourselves, happen to us, but how we need to continue to stay active and not feel overwhelmed. We know we get that sense of being overwhelmed. And then just yesterday, I attended a EL roadmap. The reason for me is really because our multilingual learners need a lot of support, and even in our littles, right? And it was particularly important for me because there is also a high school counselor toolkit. And the high school counselor toolkit, a lot of our counselors are not aware that this exists. And so this is something that I want to make sure that we share out, because it involves all of our spaces. And so just want to end with, there are a lot of people doing good work. I've seen them every single day. I see nurses helping students across the board, either if it's a Band-Aid or, administering some kind of medication. I see our school psychologists trying to get the best services possible for our students with the needs that they have. I see our speech language pathologists trying to make it happen because there's not as many of them that we need. Then I see our school counselors in different capacities, either running around trying to put out a fire, or in classrooms teaching the lesson, or talking with parents really to settle their nerves about what's currently going on. And back to what we were talking about earlier, just literacy. I have a nephew, a grandnephew, who's 2 years old. And we see him running around, and he is learning so fast. If you said something across the room, he would pick it up and he knows what you're saying. And to see how quickly he's learning, I started thinking, oh my goodness, here comes preschool. And we talk about reading, how important it is to read to him every night. My children, when they were little, I would have to take their books away so they could pay attention to me. It wasn't their phones, it was their books. And I see them now, and they're avid readers, and their vocabulary is extensive. And so I want that for all of our students. I was a second language learner. It took me a long time to pick up the language, and people will say, like, you don't have an accent. Well, the reality is I really put in a lot of work and I've always continuously have to learn. But it comes back down to, it's across the spectrum. It's our littles, our preschool students. It's our higher ed students that want to come into this field. Remember, during this time, create community, whether it be in spaces personally or professionally. But when you create those spaces of community, make those connections. Because as we struggle and this anxiety comes or we feel overwhelmed, those connections are going to keep us moving forward. Our students are looking to us as leaders. Our families are looking to us as leaders. So when you're struggling, find that community so you can keep moving forward. And thank you again for the work that you all do in your different spaces. Thank you to the commission staff that I know it's been a year, but you are doing just fantastic work. And just thank you to all the students who have entrusted us to do this work. Thank you, and I hope we have a great commission meeting. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you for sharing your experiences and your inspiring work. Other commissioners, yes, Commissioner Cobb.
Yes, I just want to say good morning to the chair and our fellow commissioners. I do have updates to share with you from the California Department of Education about our initiatives and our activities. But first, I wanted to say thank you to Chair Shire. Your words were really inspired, thoughtful, and very timely. Joy and resistance. You almost feel guilty about being joyful during times. Joy and resistance, I think, is very important to hold on to. We continue at CDE to monitor and address programs funding at the federal level and get as much information out to the field as we possibly can and stand up to things that are not legal, fair. Best. We continue to navigate this current legislative cycle. So there's multiple plates that are spinning right now, both at the federal level, but then also our regular legislative cycle where we're advocating for legislation that supports educator housing. We need support for teacher retention and recruitment, as well as the expansion of dual language immersion programs. That's just a teeny weeny professional learning for literacy and math. That's just a teeny weeny screening for reading difficulties. It's just a teeny weeny kind of sliver of the work that we do. And then we also do our impactful work at the department. And some of that work right now includes our legal convening that's coming up on April 23rd, where we're looking at how neuroscience is supporting literacy and math. So the work continues. We persist, we move forward. We're also focusing on our math frameworks. We've got our instructional materials reviewer training happening next week. So getting even closer to updated math that LEA districts can use to support students in new, innovative ways. I do want to also add, and that's I do each month, Michael, I'm thinking about you. Christopher, I'm thinking about you as well. National board certification. I think I've been was a cheerleader in high school, and I continue to cheer for national board as a real tangible tool to support teacher retention across our state. Just to let you know, our subsidy application closed on January 10th. There are currently over 4,000 teachers pursuing national board certification in California using the subsidy. The state has approved subsidy funding for 898 new California candidates in this current national board cycle. And the subsidy program, for those who are not aware, cover up to $2,500 for the cost of certification for teachers working in high priority schools. And then also our incentive applications, they closed February 7th. For this year, we have 471 new incentive applicants that are now confirming eligibility in high priority schools. This national board, but taking those tools, taking mindset, taking gifts and taking them into our most needed classrooms. That incentive program provides $25,000 or $5,000 installments over 5 years for those who are involved in the program. This is not all of our work, but just a teeny sampling of the work that continues in support of California students, our educators and our families. Resistance, advocacy, it's joy, it's hope, as Jose added, connection that get us through and continue to allow us to serve California students. Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioners? Many of our liaisons have anything to share. Yes, please, Commissioner.
Good morning, commissioners. I have a few updates from the March meeting around assessment, descriptors, and science on the California School Health Board. After gathering public feedback over several months and following significant discussions by the State Board of Education at 2 recent meetings, the board approved revised reporting for the past achievement level descriptors, or ALDs, of the acronyms, and labels to support greater clarity in the interpretation of student achievement. The board approved the CTE's recommendation for the adults, ALDs, and labeled for levels 4 advanced, 3 proficient. The board revised the level 2 label to developing, the level 1 label to minimal. The 4 ALD labels are level 4 advanced, level 3 proficient, level 2 developing, level 1 minimal. In the world of science, last year, the SB of science achievement on the California School Dashboard for informational purposes. And last month, adopted status cut scores, changed cut scores, and a 5x5 colored grid for science as we move towards full inclusion on the science indicator and on the 2025 dashboard. And that concludes my state board report. And I also wanted to mention that this is as a teacher in 2021-22, I was selected by the United States Institute of Peace to be the peace teacher representing California. And in January, 5 former peace teachers alumni were selected to work on competencies and standards for peace education. However, this was closed by the Department of Government Efficiency. And the peace teachers and I have decided that we're going to continue the work regardless. And so I look forward to at some point sharing with you peace teaching competencies, conflict resolution. My students who will be graduating this year were tremendously impacted by the work that I did with them when they were freshmen as a peace teacher. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Much needed these days. Thank you. I see that Commissioner Hill had his hand up and I got to call him.
Hi, everyone. Just a few things for us. There was a little bit of concern around the indirect costs that's tied to AB 291. Again, it's well-intentioned, but it seems that the money goes to the partner district instead of to the private IHE directly. So it really reduces the amount of funds and supports that go directly to candidates. So again, when we had our meeting with the AICCU group, that was definitely something they wanted me to bring to everyone's attention. And the other area that was brought up was the local scoring and the capacity as some of the things change around the TPAs. That would be definitely an issue in terms of capacity to support the sector in terms of what does that look like for other institutions. I know things were brought up like you could call a neighboring school to score your candidates and vice versa to remove the bias. But again, those are definitely things to reconsider as we go down this road for making some of those much needed changes. But again, I know sometimes intent and impact don't necessarily match. I know it's well intentioned, but it does kind of hit places that are quite difficult. I know indirect costs can be from anywhere from 10 to 15% of a particular budget. That really reduces your ability to serve the candidates that you have. So that's all I have from our end.
Commissioner Hill. Student liaison Olmos.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Hello to everyone in the room, as well as people joining us online. I'd like to give some report backs about the student subcommittee that I am initiating during my term. Once again, I do want to offer a sincere thank you to Commissioner Davis and Cardenas for offering me feedback on the application that I created, as well as a promotional flyer. I did launch that application in late February, and it closed the first week of March. I was able to generate an educator preparation program database to promote this opportunity, and this was all based on the roadmap to teaching on the CTC website. So want to let you all know that that resource is being used for various reasons. The great news is that I received 10 applicants. So these 10 applicants represent students throughout the state of California. And I selected 3 applicants. So 3 regional representatives. In addition to that, a general member for someone who is interested in participating at a smaller capacity. So the Northern Regional Representative's name is Lena No, and they are a student or will be a student at the University of the Pacific, and they will be pursuing their single subject credential in biology. Our Central Regional Representative is Stephen Ellis, who is currently a student at Cal State University Bakersfield and is pursuing their multi-subject credential. And then our Southern Regional Representative is Christine Lee, who is a student at National University and is pursuing their PPS credential. And as I mentioned before, a general member is Amanda Tang, who is a UCLA student and pursuing their multi-subject credential. We held our first meeting this Tuesday, April 8th, and the purpose of this 1-hour meeting was to introduce the commission structure, bring awareness to upcoming April Commission agenda items, and encouraging public comment based off of agenda items that pertain to their specific credential. We'll be working together to update the educator prep program database that I generated in hopes of developing a student survey that we'll share with all of the students in the educator prep programs to learn more about their experiences and institutional support that they receive while earning their credentials. And ultimately, I hope that this student subcommittee can serve as a pipeline to the student liaison position that I'm currently in. On a personal note, I wanted to share that I've been seeking out a lot of different professional development opportunities as I will be graduating soon. And 2 in particular have stood out to me. I was able to attend the NASPA National Conference in March, which was hosted in New Orleans. This is a conference for student affairs professionals. And in addition to that, I was able to attend the Women of Color Action Network inaugural conference at Mount San Antonio College last week. Both of these spaces served to reinvigorate me and inspired and provided a lot of hope for the future in terms of my professional and personal career. Very last update that I wanted to share is that I am currently working on my culminating capstone research project, and I will be graduating with my master's in counseling in the next 4.5 weeks. So the next time that we meet, I will have officially been graduated, and I appreciate you all. Yes, I'm very excited. It's been a long time coming, and I appreciate you all investing into my growth as an individual and a future educator.
Congratulations, and thank you for the work that you're doing and the building of future student leaders. Wow. All right, colleagues. I'm looking around one more time. 2 minutes. Okay. I now recess the general session and move to the Educated Preparation Committee. Commissioner Cardenas, will you please convene?
Good morning, everyone. Before I convene the committee, I want to check in as far as the Zoom. I'm trying to get into Zoom on my end. way I can see everybody online. But we also let the speaker now get ready. Okay. Whoever work with Zoom, you notice that every day is an update day. All right. Okay, here we go. I would like to call the April 2025 meeting of the Educator Preparation Committee to order. We have 7 items on the agenda. Yes, I said 7. 5 are scheduled for today. The remaining 2 items are scheduled for tomorrow. First item for today is 3A, teacher supply in California. 2023-2024, a report to the legislature. This item is being presented by Fifi Lau, an action item. Ms. Lau, will you?
Good morning, Commissioners. Item 3A is a teacher supply in California 2023 a report to the legislature. The Commission publishes this report every April. Within this agenda item are the summary tables that are provided in the accompanying appendix file. The appendix can be accessed on the April 2025 Commission agenda webpage and by clicking the appendix link provided on page 2 of the agenda item. Selected data from the teacher supply 2023-24 data are also available on the California Educator Supply dashboards, which can be accessed on clicking the link on page 2. What is the teacher supply report? The teacher supply report came out from Assembly Bill 471, which requires the annual reporting of supply. For Education Code 44225.6, the Commission is required to report on the number of teachers who issue credentials, certificates, permits, and waivers to teach and serve in California public schools. A detailed listing of the requirements can be found on page 2 of this agenda item. This report mainly focuses on teaching credentials, specifically the multiple subject, single subject, and education specialists, as well as the permits, waivers, and certificates associated with these teaching credentials. Other teaching credentials, such as the designated subjects, the career technical education, the CTE, and special subjects are included in the report. In today's presentation, I will highlight selected findings from the 2023-24 fiscal year report. Data in these selected findings will be available in the Commission Educator Supply dashboards, which will be referenced during the presentation or at the bottom of the presentation. Let's begin with new teaching credentials issued by preparation in the last 5 years, which can be found on page 6, table 1B in the agenda item, and also on the presentation slide. In the most recent 23-24 year, there was a total of 17,328 new teaching credentials issued by California IEG prepared program sponsors, California LEA prepared program sponsors, those will be the districts and counties, and out-of-state, out-of-country prepared institutions. Those will be teachers who already hold a multiple teaching credential outside of California. This shows an increase of 18% from the prior 22-23 year. There was also an increase by all preparation between 22-23 and 23-24 for California IEG prepared by 23%, California LEA prepared by 22%, and out-of-state, out-of-country prepared by 2%. Moving on to page 10, table 3B on the presentation slide, data show the change in the proportion of new credentials by preparation in the last 5 years. Focusing on the 23-24 year, data show that 3/4 of credentials were prepared by IEG, with 54% in the traditional route, 22% in the IEG intern route, 5% in prepared in the LEA intern route, while the remaining 20% were prepared by out of state and out of country. Next on the agenda item page 8A slide, data show the breakdown of new teaching issued by 3.
Sorry. Our folks online are having trouble hearing you.
Okay. Shall try my best. Speak louder.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Not sorry. So the breakdown of new teaching credentials issued by 3 credential types, multiple subject, single subject, and education specialist teaching credentials in the last 5 years. For the most recent 23-24 year, data show an increase in all credential types from the prior 22-23 year. Multiple subject by 28%, single subject by 10%, and education specialist by 15%. On agenda item page 9, table 2B, data show the 5-year trend of the percentage of total new credentials issued by credential types. In the 23-24 year, out of the 17,328 new teaching credentials issued, multiple subject credentials consisted of 42%, single subject credentials consisted of 38%, and education specialist credentials consisted of 20% of the total. Next, agenda item page 10, table 4A and 4B, and on the presentation slide, data display the number of percentage of new credentials recommended in the last 5 years by the 3 IEG segments: California State University, CSU, University of California, and private independent colleges and universities. On the presentation slide, the total number of credentials issued are indicated at the bottom of the bars, while the percent of total by segment are represented at the top of the bars. In comparing the proportion by percentage of new credentials issued by each IEG prepared segment in the most recent 23-24 year, CSU prepared nearly half, with private independent colleges and universities preparing more than 2/5, and the UC segment preparing the remaining 6% of new teaching credentials issued. When comparing the proportion by percentage between 1920 and 23-24, there was an increase of 4 percentage points for CSU, a decrease of 3 percentage points for private independent colleges and universities, and no change in the proportion for UC. Next on agenda item page 11, table 5A, and on the presentation slide, data display the 5-year trend of the number of new intern credentials issued in California. Intern credential holders are teacher candidates in the teacher pipeline who are employed as a teacher of record in a TK-12 classroom while concurrently completing coursework, clinical practice, and other program requirements to earn their preliminary teaching credential. There are 2 types of intern programs: the university intern program offered by IEGs and the district intern program offered by LEAs, which are the counties and districts. Focusing on the most recent 23-24 data for university intern credentials, there was an increase in the number of issuances by 25% from the prior 22-23 year, and in all teaching areas. A 25% increase in multiple subject, a 28% increase in single subject, and a 21% increase in education specialists. For district intern credentials, there was also an increase by 39% from the prior 22-23 year, and in all credential types. About a 33% increase in multiple subject, a 41% increase in single subject, and a 43% increase in education specialists. Overall, there was an increase in all intern credentials issued by 28% between 22-23 and 23-24. Other teaching credentials such as designated subject CTE and special subjects teaching are provided in the following sections on pages 12 through 17 of the agenda item. Let's take a pause on teaching credentials and turn our attention to candidate enrollment for preparation programs that may give us insights in future teacher supply. On page 18, table 8A, and on the presentation slide, data show the last 5 years of candidate enrollment. Teacher preparation enrollment data are collected as part of the accreditation's annual data submission process, where institutions are required to report total candidate enrollment, the head count, which includes new and continuing candidates enrolled in the commission-approved program between September 1st to August 31st of each school year, usually referred to as the academic year. In the 23-24 academic year, there was a reported total of 38,596 enrolled candidates by institutions. That's a decrease of 5% from the prior 22-23 year. When looking at the type of enrolled candidates, there was an increase of new candidate enrollment of about 7% and a decrease of continuing candidates of 14% between 22-23 and 23-24. Much of the overall decrease can be contributed to the decrease of continuing candidates because they comprise of more than half of the total enrollment. There may be a relationship of candidate enrollment and credentials issued, but it is important to be mindful that the reporting of the data are not the same. For example, the length of program candidate enrollment status, such as full-time and part-time, may impact when enrolled candidates are issued a credential. Therefore, enrollment does not necessarily equal to credentials issued in the year. Another note is the misalignment of the reporting years, where the annual data submission reports by academic year, September 1st to August 31st, and the credentials issued reports by fiscal year, July 1st to June 30th. Other credential information and data tables in the following sections in the agenda items, such as English learner authorization and child development permits, are available on pages 19 through 23. Now we will move to the teaching permits and waiver sections that start at the bottom of page 23. On agenda item pages 4-6, table 11A through 11B, and on the presentation slide, data show the number of teaching permits, specifically the short-term staff permit, the STIP, provisional internship permit, the PIP, teaching permit for statutory leave, the TIPSO, limited assignment permits, and the emergency transitional kindergarten permit issued in the last 5 years. Now let's take a look at each permit individually, starting with the STIP. A STIP is issued to individuals to fill a classroom immediately based on an acute staffing need that was unperceived by the school district. For the most recent 23-24 year, there was an increase of STIPs issued by 17% and in all credential areas, an 18% increase in multiple subject, a 6% increase in single subject, and a 28% increase in education specialists. STIPs are valid within 1 school year and cannot be renewed. Next, let's take a look at PIP issuances. A PIP is issued to individuals when a school district has an anticipated staffing need due to not being able to recruit a credentialed teacher after a diligent search. There was also an increase in the number of PIPs issued by about 14% between 22-23 and 23-24. Similar to the STIPs, there was an increase in all credential areas. A 5% increase in multiple subjects, a 37% increase in single subject, and a 12% increase in education specialists. PIPs are valid for a year from issuance and cannot be renewed. Next is the TIPSO, which was developed in 2016. A TIPSO is issued to individuals as temporary teachers when the teacher of record is unable to teach due to statutory leave, medical, or otherwise. Data show that the number of TIPSOs from significant and has steadily increased since then. An increase of about 24% between 22-23 and 23-24. A TIPSO is valid for a year but can be requirements. Next are the limited assignment permits. A limited assignment permit is issued to a fully credentialed teacher who is working toward an additional teaching credential in the area where the permit is held. Again, focusing on the 23-24 year, there was a decrease in overall number of limited assignments by 11% from the prior 22-23 year and in all credential areas. An 11% decrease in multiple subjects, a 5% decrease in single subject, and a 30% decrease in education specialists. Limited assignments are valid for a year. Single subject can be reissued twice in one specific subject or in a specialty area with the education specialist. In this year's teacher supply report, the Emergency Specialist Teaching Permit in Early Childhood Education, also known as the Emergency Transitional Kindergarten or the ETK permit, was included. The permit became available for issuance in July 2022. An ETK permit is issued to individuals to fill a transitional kindergarten assignment when a fully credentialed teacher cannot be recruited. The ETK permit authorizes teaching in all subjects in a self-contained transitional kindergarten general education classroom. Since the inception of the ETK permit, there was an 854% increase between 22-23 and 23-24. The ETK permit is valid for 1 year and is renewable one time for a total of 2 issuances. Overall, when all teaching permits were combined, there was an increase of about 12% from the prior 22 year and also in all credential areas. An increase of 12% in multiple subjects, an increase of 6% in single subject, a 13% increase in education specialists, and as previously reported, a 24% increase in TIPSOs, and an 854. Now let's move on to teaching waivers, which is on page 27, table 11E, and in the agenda item and on the presentation slide. Data display the number of waivers issued in the last 5 years. Waivers are issued or denied to individuals based on the school district's continual needs, intern credential holder, or permit holder cannot be found to fill a teaching position. In the most recent 23-24 year, there were 415 waivers issued, which resulted to a decrease of 30% from the prior 22 year. There was a decrease of, there was a decrease of waivers in all credential areas. A 47% decrease in multiple subject, a 31% decrease in single subject, and a 7% decrease in education specialists. Focusing only on teaching intern permits and waivers with the exclusion of TIPSO and ETK permits, data show that most documents were issued as SIPs, which accounted for more than 1/3, followed by university interns, which accounted for about 1/4 of documents issued in the 23-24 year. Taking a look at the prior 22-23 year, we can see a similar trend. However, data in 21-22 shows the reverse between STIPs and university interns, where university interns accounted for more than 1/3 of issuances, followed by STIPs that accounted for more than 1/5 of issuances. When we add on the 2021 and 1920 years to show a 5-year trend, 1920, 2021, and 21-22 followed a similar pattern where most documents were issued as university interns, followed by STIPs and some shifting between TIPs and limited assignments. In 23-24, most documents followed the same pattern, except for the reverse, where STIPs were issued more than interns. Looking at the proportion of the teaching intern permits and waivers with the exclusion of TIPSO and ETP permits by region in the last 5 years, data show that in 1920 and 2021, documents were closely distributed across the South Coast, Bay Area, and South San Joaquin Central Valley regions, which you can see from the orange color on the maps. Starting from 21-22 to 23-24, the proportion of the combined teaching intern permits and waiver issuances continued to grow in the South Coast region. If we take a look at each document, starting with intern issuances, data show consistency where the South Coast region had about 1/3 of issuances. Starting in 21-22, there was a steady decrease of the issuances in the Bay Area and South San Joaquin County. For permits, the highest proportion of permits were issued in the South Coast region in the last 5 years, with an increase of 6 percentage points between 1920 and 23-24. And then for waivers, for the last 5 years, the highest proportion of waivers issued were in the Bay Area region. On the next slide, data show the total number of new preliminary clear teaching credentials and intern, permit, and waiver documents issued in the last 5 years. All 4 groups have varying levels of issuances between 1920 and 23-24, where the highest number of new preliminary and clear teaching credentials were issued in 2021, and the lowest number in 22-23. For intern credentials, the highest number of issuances were in 21-22, and the lowest in 22-23. For permits, the most recent 23-24 year shows the highest number of issuances than in 2021, when it was the lowest. And for waivers, data show the highest number of issuances in 2021, and then tapering off to 23-24, showing the lowest number in the last 5 years. I do want to mention that despite the increase of intern and permit documents issued, especially in the 23 year, the trend of intern, permit, and waiver document holders represent about 4 to 5% of the teaching workforce, as indicated in Table 12 on page 32 and 33 in the agenda item. Next, we're looking at the proportion of issuances by credential area as identified by the color legend on the slide. Most of the preliminary and clear teaching credentials were issued in multiple subjects. The highest proportion of intern credentials were issued in education specialists. Most of the permits were issued in single subject until 23-24, when it was issued in multiple subjects. And there were fluctuation in waivers where in 1920 and 2021 were mostly issued in education specialists, and in the last 2 recent years, they were issued in single subject. California has had a shortage of new credentials issued in math, science, and special education. Let's take a look at what the 5-year trends look like for these credentials. For math on the left chart, there was a steady decline of new credentials issued until 23-24, where there was a 15% increase from the prior 22-23 year. However, there was also an increase, albeit smaller, in the number of intern, permit, and waivers issued by 2%. For science in the middle chart, it follows a similar pattern like math, where there has been a decline of new science credentials issued until 23-24, which now has an increase of 7%. There was an increase in the intern waivers in 23-24 by 13%. And on the right chart for education specialists, there has been fluctuations in the documents issued in the last 5 years, despite the increase in new education specialist credentials in 2024. It showed the largest gap of 1,805 issuances between new credentials and intern, permit, and waiver documents issued when compared to the prior year. These shortage areas, including all issuances of intern, permit, and waiver documents, allow the Commission to analyze and understand teacher demand. While teacher demand is not required to be reported in the teacher supply report, data on intern, permit, and waiver document issuances can be used as proxy to project teacher demand, because they represent teachers of record in the K-12 classroom. There is currently no statewide methodology that can provide teacher demand data. Teacher demand can also be through local education agencies reporting of their estimated teacher hires that the California Department of Education, CDE, publishes annually on the California Basic Educational Data System, the CBEDS website. An analysis of estimated teacher hires data is available on the agenda, pages 36 to 41. The next slides are also additional data reported but not mandated by Education Code 44225.6 to provide a demographic profile of the teaching workforce as compared to the state population, enrolled TK-12 students, and new enrolled teacher candidates. Data are available on agenda item pages 34 to 36. Now let's take a look at the demographic data trends for the last 5 years. On the presentation slide, the term gender identity is used for all 4 groups for comparison purposes. The state population, as you can see on the first chart, reports on sex rather than gender or group identity. Only 2 options, female and male, are provided. As the data show on the page, slightly more than half of the state population are reported female. In contrast, on the second group for enrolled K-12 students, slightly more than half are reported male. 3/4 of teachers and new teacher candidates were reported female, a proportion that has stayed relatively consistent over the last 5 years. Next, let's move on to race ethnicity data. On the presentation slide, if we take a look at each race ethnicity, starting with American, Indian, or Alaskan Native, these individuals represent about 1% or less in all 4 groups. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander represented less than 1% across 4 groups. 2 or more races also show consistency across all 4 groups. Taking a look at Asians, there was an increase in the proportion of Asian population in the last 5 years, and a steady proportion of about 12% for enrolled TK-12 students and about 8% in teachers and new enrolled teacher candidates. Black or African Americans showed a similar pattern to Asians, but with a smaller proportion across all 4 groups. For new enrolled teacher candidates, there was an increase of 1% from 4% to 5% between 2019-20 and 21-22, then staying steady at 5% for the last 2 years. For Hispanic Latinx, there was a slight decline in the population starting in 22-23, but a steady increase in enrolled students, teachers, and teacher candidates, with TK-12 students showing more than half of the proportion was identified as Hispanic Latinx. In contrast, the white race has shown a steady decline in the last 5 years across all 4 groups, with the highest decline in new enrolled candidates of 8 percentage points between 19-20 and 21-22, and then staying steady at 33% for the next 2 years. When looking at both Hispanic, Latinx, and white, data show that the proportion of Hispanic Latinx candidates really started to increase in 2021. The proportion between the 2 groups are very close as well. On the next presentation slide, I wanted to step back and present the proportion of demographics for all race ethnicity grouped together. In each stacked bar graph, the percentage displayed indicates the highest proportion for each year. So in essence, California population shows the highest proportion of race ethnicity is Hispanic Latinx. Same for TK-12 white in all 5 years. And for enrolled teacher candidates, the highest proportion was white in 1920 until 21-22, when Hispanic Latinx surpassed the proportion of white candidates and continued to do so in the next couple years. Overall, the 5-year data indicate that the majority of population and TK-12 enrolled students was proportionally Hispanic Latinx, with a rise of Hispanic Latinx enrolled teacher candidates since 21-22. Despite the decrease in white teachers in the last 5 years, they continue to represent the majority of the teacher workforce. In conclusion, the 2023-24 Teacher Supply Report is an action item, and Commission staff requests that the Commissioners approve the report so that it will be transmitted to the Governor and Legislative Office by April 15th as mandated. The 23-24 report summarizes the following. The increase of new teaching credentials issued via all preparation, that's the California prepared and out-of-state, out-of-country prepared, and in all credential types. That's a multiple subject, single subject, education specialist from the prior 22 year. There was a slight change in the proportion of teaching credentials issued by IAGs in the last 5 years where data showed an increase for CSU, decrease for private independent colleges and universities, and no change for UC between 1920 and 2024. There was an increase in inter-credentials and permits, specifically the SIP, PIP, SIPSO, and ETK documents issued from the prior year. There was a decrease in limited assignment permits and waivers from the prior year. Overall, there was an increase of new teaching credentials and permits the 23-24 year. I now conclude the 2023-24 teacher supply report presentation. And if you have any questions about the data in the report, I will be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that great report. We will now open up for public comment. There are members of the public that would like to make a comment. Please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon, participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Good morning, commissioners.
Morning.
We all face a lot of challenges these days. Hopefully this commission meeting is not one of them. Actually, I have a brief comment on this, on the child development permit work group. Access.
That's not beside it. This is teacher supply.
No.
Yeah, they may have part for teacher supply.
Sorry.
But
See you soon.
We'll go to Aaron Freshy. Microphone and share your comment.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Erin Fresky, and I'm representing Californians Together. And I wanted to share just a little bit of insight and request from the commission. We really appreciate the report that was shared earlier. And just to highlight that, as you're aware, we have nearly 2.6 million children in K through 12 public schools who are bringing a valuable linguistic asset to school where they come from a home where language other than English is spoken. And although a large number of those children eventually demonstrate English proficiency during their school years, we also know that many of their home language skills are overlooked in school, and as a result, many do not receive the state's biliteracy designation when they graduate from high school, which we know would be advantageous when they're applying for higher ed or other job opportunities. As we look at the data that was shared and in the report, it's evident that we still are facing challenges in hiring and certifying bilingual teachers in our system. And in alignment with the English Learner Roadmap, we are really encouraging the commission to continue to ensure that dual language learners, English learners in our state receive high quality instruction from bilingual educators. So we would like to really encourage the commission to focus data more on bilingual educators, their credentials, their authorizations, to help our collaborative efforts move forward in this area. For instance, the number of pre-K to third grade credential recipients who obtain a bilingual authorization when that information is available will be a very critical, important data point. And we, as Californians Together, hope to work with you closely so that we can continue to move this bilingual educator access data and pipeline issue forward. Thank you.
Sacco, your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Jessica Sacco on behalf of Children Now. First off, I'd like to start by congratulating Erin Sullivan on her appointment as director. Really excited for that. Also wanted to thank the commission and the data presentation, especially the inclusion of the race ethnicity data. Even though this isn't a required set of information, it is something that is often requested by the field, and we are really heartened to see the increased diversity, particularly representation of the Latino community entering the educator workforce. I was struggling to actually find that same data report on the commission's website, so I don't know if it's something that I'm just having trouble navigating, but if that's something where I could get some help, I'll reach out to the data division after this meeting. But really appreciate your attention to this matter, and excited to see and hope that the trend of the increased number of new credentials that we saw this year is more than a one-year blip and continues on in the future, and appreciate the commission's leadership in this space.
Try it again, Doug Gephardt.
Good morning. Teacher supply. Action is concerned that any additional authorization or specialization might lead to the narrowing of the workforce and restrict the ability of school staff in the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, otherwise known as ELOP. Purpose of ELOP is for school districts and charter schools to offer after-school and summer school enrichment programs for grades kindergarten through 6th grade. These programs have been highly successful in re-engaging students post-pandemic, combating chronic absenteeism, and helping families in a multitude of ways. Creating additional regulations around staffing would change the intent of the program and hinder enrichment programs. Thank you.
The public comment period for this item is now closed. Commissioners have any questions or comments on this item?
I really love this data. This is, I always say it's my favorite report, but there's 2 a year that I really like. But this one in particular, but I have some questions. First thing is, I don't think that we're giving the field enough credit when we say that the number of African-American teachers has increased by 1%. Because I think if you do the math of that, you'll probably come up with something closer to 25%. If you take the base number and then increase and divide by the old. So I think that that is actually a phenomenal increase to be able to have that. But I have questions about the drop in the intern credential. Do we have any idea why that might be?
A long walk to come up here and say, not particularly. I mean, we were looking at this as well, and I was wondering the same thing, that the balance between the intern STIPs and the PIPs, and we know that higher ed institutions have been us for a little while now, a couple of years, that they are finding themselves serving candidates whose student teaching placements are putting them on STIPs and PIPs, which is lovely because that helps those individuals get paid while they're doing their student teaching, but it makes the support of those individuals a strange gray area for institutions. So when I saw that, I was wondering if, because we saw the reverse, right? The decrease in interns and the increase in STIPs and PIPs, and it made me ask myself, is that because of this phenomenon? Teachers ending, or student teachers ending up with emergency permits, but I don't have any data to back that up other than my own brain.
Is there any way to verify or to cross-reference employment status with credential status?
Can we repeat that?
Is there any way to cross-reference credential status with employment status? So I'm wondering if they are using that, if employers are using that for positions that are not for a full year, that they maybe couldn't get a university to sign off on the internship.
It's possible, and we can reference that to a certain extent. I mean, we have a good sharing relationship with CDE because that's what we would
We would have to send some information. So I know we do that for like on his assignment reports, right? So we do that. I will also want to add, and PP here, you know, we have the residency programs now as well, which are, when I first read about residencies, I thought, well, those sound like intern programs, and they are to a certain extent, right? Candidates are able to serve teacher of record, but they get more support. So it's possible that the increase in residencies may also have something to do with that increase in it. But to your cross-reference question.
So there is a way to look at that, but we have to keep in mind that the data we receive on employment from CDE is based on census day employment. So it's a snapshot in time. So we don't have data that spans the entire school year. No state agency, as far as I'm aware, has anything like that. It's only based on that snapshot in time, which is the first Wednesday in October.
Before TIPSL, if I had a pregnancy leave, I would have used a STIP or a PIP to cover it. So that's kind of where I'm wondering if that's why the issuances are. But TIPSL had a healthy increase also.
Any other commissioners?
I have a related question. Thanks for asking that. It checks off one of my questions. Do we, because you have the data across a number of years, do we have any, what do you know about the retention of SIPs, PIPs, waivers versus intern?
The retention in, so do these individuals end up staying in that role?
Yeah, may I just, I can jump on that. The University of California Citeran Research Group did a study of that very thing several years ago and found that about 40% of the people who start on PIPs and STIPs leave and don't come into the teaching force. They get 1 year on each of those permits. Ultimately, they depart and don't continue teaching.
And that was Citeran's report, like
Citeran's report. I think it's been maybe 3 or 4 years. We can find that link for you.
The other question that would be helpful. I mean, I'm trying to understand, and I think that we need to look at, because the numbers are so high, and we need reasons why the numbers are so high. But if the trend continues, then we need to be able to make some recommendations on how to strengthen, particularly the entrance pathway. And I probably would be able to say that too, once we understood why folks are leaving from the STIP and waiver pool. I remember several meetings ago where I think you reported on some kind of state reciprocity agreement on working in California. And can we have an update on that? Like, I'm trying to understand the numbers, particularly for intern programs. It looks like out of state prepared and IHE prepared, the numbers are about the same. And it just got me thinking, what's happening with that reciprocity agreement?
Well, I actually would love to defer to our content expert, which would be Erin Skubal. Who would be Erin Skubal?
So if I am thinking of the correct thing that Mary may have referenced previously, that would have been the Interstate Teacher Compact Agreement. So California did not enter into the Interstate Teacher Compact Agreement because California already has very streamlined reciprocity for out-of-state prepared teachers. And so the legislature instead approved language for military mobility, which was really the piece of the Interstate Teacher Compact that California was lacking. So that's how the legislature moved forward with that agreement. So we have our standard reciprocity, which requires to have a bachelor's degree and a comparable professional level teaching license from the state they're coming from. Those are the only two requirements. They need to have fingerprint clearance, obviously, to apply and submit their application if they can qualify for their 5-year preliminary credential.
Okay, so there's a minor application process for out-of-state.
Yes, especially now that the bachelor's degree satisfies the basic skills requirement. Teachers who have 2 or more years of teaching experience that's satisfactory from the state they're coming from
do not have to complete the induction program. So those teachers with that experience typically only have to satisfy the English learner requirement in order to obtain their credential.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Online.
I have a question.
Commissioner Martinez?
Do we have any sense about the time it takes to get a credential? Like, would you guys, I mean, I know it varies for interns and everything else, but within, CSU or one of the higher ed institutions, is there any way to track time to complete? And it's a really hard question. There's multiple moving parts. If the answer is no, I'm good with that, but just curious if we track that at all.
I would defer to, so we don't particularly at the commission. I will just point out that the legislature has put a number of options in place in the last few years to streamline that as much as possible. For instance, we've got the integrated teacher prep programs now where a candidate can get their baccalaureate degree and earn their credential at the same time or very, very closely together. Whereas, programs when I started at the commission were all post-bac. So there are a lot of options to move that through, but I think probably your colleagues here on the commission from higher ed can talk to that.
So I can respond, but I have an expert here in the house, our director of our Educator Quality Center, Boyd, so I might ask. Can I ask him to speak? Yeah. Would you like to?
Come on down, Paul. While Paul is coming to the table, I actually have the reference for the Sateran research if you'd like. And the finding is statewide, less than 40% of new teachers who begin with a waiver or emergency permit go on to become fully prepared. Less than 40% go on to become fully prepared. More than 40% of these teachers end up leaving the profession by the end of their third year of teaching. And the title of their report is Diversifying California's Teaching Force, How Teachers Enter the Classroom, Who They Serve, and If They Stay, by Deborah Latorre, Seth Leon, Christine Ong, Tina Sloan, and Thomas Smith. This was, I don't have the publication date, but I've got the link so I can
send that around.
Yeah, I'll post it on, if I can. Let me send it to, if you could share it on Zoom and commissioners, that'd be great.
Okay, for this, everyone, I'm Paul Tuss with the CSU. Within the CSU, we have been looking at time to completion, and our most recent data showing about 60% of students who are admitted to a CSU credential program complete within 2 years. It varies enormously from one university and one campus to another. It can be under 50, it can be over 80 at some campuses. And then there are a lot of differences between our campuses in terms of when some people don't admit until you complete all of your preliminary coursework. So conditional admits are counted in this completion rate under completion calculation at some universities and not in others. So it's a little variable, and then there's enormous differences by race, ethnicity, possibly having to do with having jobs while you're pursuing your teaching credential, or financial hardships, or family responsibilities, or other life circumstances. So
Thank you, I appreciate it. I mean, it's a little bit of a one-off, but it does have huge implications about students' time to completion and their debt, or if they're using the grants, all that. So again, a little one-off, and I know it requires multiple databases, but I appreciate you guys answering the question, and maybe it is our higher ed institutions that we look at to get us more information about that.
See, our residency students do complete.
Oh, that'd be very, yeah.
Is that credential only or credential and master?
preliminary credential.
Just credential only.
Credential only.
We're also seeing some geographic patterns in urban areas versus rural areas. So it's an interesting, we're going to continue to track this.
Thank you. The ever evolving science.
Very much. Are there any other commissioners? Any. This is an action item. Do I have a motion that the commission approve the teacher supply in California 2023-2024 report transmittal to the governor and the legislature? So moved. Commissioner Simmons, Commissioner Davis. Do I have a second? Commissioner Martinez? Right, since I have a first and a second. I have a motion by Commissioner Davis. I have a second by Commissioner Martinez. Any further discussion? The recording secretary, please call for the vote. Each member, please respond with aye, nay, or abstain.
Jeanette Brown. Aye. Jose Cardenas.
Aye.
Carol Cochran. Juan Cruz.
Aye.
Christopher Davis.
Aye.
Michael De La Torre.
Aye.
Makita Shire. Aye. Bonnie Clark. Aye. Ira Lett.
Aye.
Mencius.
Aye.
Monica Martinez. Aye. David Simmons.
Aye.
Fong Yuzhou. Aye. Motion carries.
Just want to say thank you to Ms. Lau and to the team. So you did a great job. It's a fantastic report, and I know you put a lot of work into it. We really appreciate this report. So thank you, everyone. At this point in time, we're going to go for a short break. I know we need to get up, get a little bit of blood flow. 10 minutes. Right. So our next item is 3B, the Child Development Permit Group. Recommendations for the added authorizations. This item is being presented by Renee Marshall, Keeler, and Brownman Kennedy. This is an information action item. Ms. Marshall, will you begin?
Thank you so much. I just want to call attention to Bronwyn Kennedy, who's joining us virtually today. Thank you so much. Good morning, commissioners. Today, the ECE team is presenting an important next step in the commission's ongoing efforts to modernize and elevate the revised child development permit matrix. The CDP Workgroup recommendations for two proposed added authorizations for child development permit holders, formerly referred to as specializations, focusing on specified additional services that include expanded learning and infant toddler programs. These recommendations reflect the culmination of extensive work by the Child Development Permit Workgroup to ensure that ECE permitting structure is responsive to the realities of today's workforce's readiness and the evolving needs of California's children and families. As a reminder, added authorizations are designed to build on the base permit by formally recognizing an educator's additional preparation in a specific area of practice and adding a specific authorization to work in these specialized areas. This approach mirrors how other commission-issued credentials functions and create a system that is both flexible and rigorous. Ultimately, this work aligns with the with the goals outlined in the master plan for early learning and care, including building accessible pathways into the profession, ensuring developmentally appropriate, high-quality instruction, and strengthening educator preparation and advancement opportunities. I'd like to hand it over to Debbie Keeler.
Thank you, Renee. Good morning, commissioners. So why is the work group recommending added authorizations? We've seen significant shifts in workforce demand, not just in the number of ECE professionals needed, but in the specialized expertise they are expected to bring. Under the current child development permit structure, an added authorization already allows educators to serve at school-age children by completing specific coursework requirements. Let's consider two critical areas. First of all, expanded learning, which is referred to as school age. California is home to the largest publicly funded after-school system in the nation, now serving over 900,000 children daily. With recent multi-billion-dollar investments in expanded learning opportunity programs, we must ensure that those leading these programs have the preparation available to them to support school-age learners through developmentally appropriate and engaging experiences. For Education Code 46120 and SB 114, Districts must develop a comprehensive expanded learning opportunity program plan, emphasizing safety, engagement, youth voice, equity, quality staffing, partnerships, and continuous improvement as indicated on the CDE website. Let's go to infant toddler. Research shows that the first 3 years of life are foundational for brain development. At the same time, Title 22 regulations, which are noted in the agenda item, require specialized coursework to work with this age group for ECE 2, ECE 3, ECA 1, and ECA 2 levels. The current CDP structure does not fully meet these demands. These proposed authorizations help fill that gap by acknowledging and formalizing additional areas of expertise within our ECE workforce. Let's briefly walk through the highlights brought forward by the CDP work group, including two added authorizations that are under consideration as mentioned. First of all, expanded learning authorization, which begins on page 3 of your agenda item. This recommendation builds upon and aligns with the needs of the field with the school age emphasis found in the current CDP structure. It would now require a current permit holder to obtain 6 units of specialized coursework divided into 3 units in school age development and curriculum, 3 units in programming for school age children. This coursework ensures alignment with the expectation and quality standards of the expanded learning opportunity program, which offers 9 hours of programming per day during the school year and 30 additional non-school days each year. This authorization would help educators meet the unique needs of a broad range of ages from 4 to 12, which includes transitional kindergarten through grade 6 students in a variety of settings, before school, after school, summer, and intersession programs. Infant and toddler authorization, which begins on page 5 of the agenda item. This would be a new authorization added to the permit structure. It directly responds to both Title 22 requirements and the increasing demand for higher quality infant and toddler educators. It would require a current permit holder to obtain 6 units of specialized coursework divided into 3 units in infant, toddler, and development, and 3 units in care and education for infants and toddlers. This recommendation supports our youngest learners by ensuring that their educators have the specific knowledge and preparation needed to provide high quality care during the most critical years of development. Together, these authorizations would enhance educator preparation and create clear pathways for professionals across early childhood settings. The CDP matrix adopted by the Commission reflects both a lattice for stability and a ladder for opportunity across the ECE profession. These recommendations are grounded in a rigorous and inclusive process led by the CDP work group. Ad hoc committees of experts in expanded learning and infant toddler were convened to explore each area in depth. Public and work group polling included feedback from over 60 stakeholders, demonstrated strong support for both proposed authorization. You'll find the data summarized in Appendix C. The recommendations are also aligned with the Curriculum Alignment Project known as the CAP expansion courses, helping ensure consistency across community colleges and transfer institutions statewide. And importantly, they align with ongoing work to revise the ECE teaching performance expectations, ensuring these added authorizations are competency-based and outcomes-driven. While today's focus is on expanded learning and infant toddler, the work group also identified 2 additional areas for future consideration: bilingual education and special education. Both areas were flagged as high need and high impact by the CDP work group. However, staff recommends allowing more time to fully assess their complexity and feasibility, particularly with regard to alignment across existing credentials and pathways. We will bring forward further recommendations when that analysis is complete. I will now hand it back to Renee.
Thank you so much. Staff recommendation. Today, for staff recommendation, we are hopeful that the commission's review of today's information, and if appropriate, the commission will direct staff to move forward with including one or both of the proposed added authorizations in the updated child development permit matrix. In closing, these proposed authorizations are more than regulatory changes. They're a signal of a shared commitment to ensure all children in California have access to well-prepared, specialized, and supported educators from birth through age 12. Authorizations will provide an opportunity for additional preparation in specific areas, offer clear, meaningful recognition of additional preparation while helping educators meet licensing requirements and serve children across a range of settings. We're happy to answer any questions and we welcome your discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll now open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to make a comment, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, pressing *9 if participating by phone. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per speaker. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Wilkin, unmute your microphone and share your comment.
I'm ready.
Go ahead, please.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Lisa Wilkin. I'm the executive director of the Child Development Consortium of Los Angeles, a Title V contractor serving 550 infants, toddlers, and preschool-age children each day in childcare centers and family childcare homes throughout LA County, and employing 90 individuals with some level of child development permit, including me. Just as Oxai has concerns about the extended learning authorization leading to the narrowing of the ELOP workforce and subsequent lack of childcare access, I have to voice my concerns about the infant toddler authorization to the child development permit. Teachers in infant toddler classrooms are already required by licensing regulation to complete 3 semester units in infant growth and development. The additional coursework defined in the authorization would provide no additional benefit to the teacher or the program operations. The proposed infant toddler authorization and its corresponding increased course requirements could potentially exacerbate our struggles to find qualified teachers during a historic workforce shortage by creating additional educational barriers for the diverse early childhood teaching workforce that we rely on. While the Commission has continually expressed that operational considerations related to changes to the permit matrix and any additional authorizations are not something that is your concern, for those of us that operate Title V child development programs, these changes and their potential impacts are top of mind. I urge you to take note of the concerns in your consideration of this matter. I appreciate you giving me the time to speak on this agenda item. Thank you.
Rashi, please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Fresky. No one gets it right. It's okay. Hi again. I'm Erin Fresky, representing Californians Together, and just wanted to elevate the need for the bilingual child development permit authorization, which was just noted has been postponed for now. And just to elevate the fact that 60% of the children under 5 in California are living in homes where a language other than English is spoken. And as noted about our older children, our younger ones also bring in valuable linguistic and cultural assets to the classroom. Currently, unlike the pre-K to 12 credentialing system, there is no bilingual child development permit authorization, and the coursework in dual language learning is not a requirement of most preparation programs, and there are no CAP-aligned dual language learning courses. But we do know that about half of our staff in early education programs are bilingual, and we have an opportunity here to move the needle in the early years. We believe that the addition of a bilingual specialization or authorization to the child development permit is a critical step to ensuring our youngest dual language learners are successful now and later in life. And through this addition of an authorization, we can elevate the expertise of our multilingual workforce, advance the knowledge and skills of our early educators, and ensure that the state's dual language learners experience the most developmentally, culturally, and linguistically appropriate early learning. Californians Together wants to encourage the commission to continue considering this authorization and doing so quickly, knowing that if we delay it much longer, it will have negative consequences for our youngest dual language learners in the state. And we look forward to collaborating with you and our institutes of higher ed and other stakeholders to move this effort forward. Thank you.
Please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Sandra Moe. I'm a recently retired community college child development and education professor. And currently I serve as Peach's Child Development Permit Workgroup co-lead. I support the recommendations for added authorizations to the Child Development Permit revision, particularly for the change in the school age emphasis from the previous version. As a community college verification of completion VOC representative for over 15 years, I noted that the historic school age emphasis permit limited employment opportunities to the field of school age programs. With the approach of adding the school age emphasis to the base child development permit, employment opportunities are and the quality of programs and outcomes for children will be enhanced. Permit holders will not only know the basics of child development and learning from birth to age 8, but the details for infant and toddler development and school age development and how that fits with the children, the classroom, and the curriculum. And also, this does support the expanded early learning program and the Title 22 infant toddler requirements because it adds not only development for infants and toddlers, but how you present curriculum, which is very different than you do for school age and preschool children. Thank you for the opportunity.
Please unmute your microphone and share your comment.
Good morning. My name is Eduardo Gutierrez, representing Early Edge California. We strongly support the infant and toddler added authorization and urge the approval of additional authorizations to move early childhood education forward. California is home to 1.2 million babies, with nearly 60% of children under 6 being dual language learners. These numbers make clear the urgent need for the child development permit to include specialized training for working with infants, toddlers, and diverse learners. Research shows that the first 3 years of a life are critical for brain development, language, and learning, making early high-quality care essential. Yet California faces a shortage of overqualified infant and toddler educators. The infant and toddler authorization, alongside a bilingual authorization, will help close this gap, ensuring culturally and linguistically responsive care for all children, including those with special needs. We urge the Commission to prioritize all added authorizations because investing in our youngest learners is investing in California's future. Early Edge looks forward to working with the Commission to ensure timely implementation of the added authorizations. Thank you.
Unmute your microphone, your comment.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maeva Mark. Sorry I couldn't be with you in person today, but I just want to give a shout out to Renee, Marshall, and team. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. So as a former preschool teacher, aftercare program counselor, special ed teacher, and now an advocate for early learning and care, I appreciate the vision that we have to make sure that we have a workforce that is prepared to support all of our children, regardless of their diverse learning needs. And what I would like to urge the commission to do is to continue to really think through these authorizations and what will help prepare our educators on long term, especially those who are coming into the field to work with each and every child. one thing that I learned in graduate school was that a good teacher can teach any child. And so, with these add-ons, I think it's a great opportunity for our workforce to enhance their skills. Um, However, what I would say is that I think we need to spend some more time really thinking through how can we make this something that our early ed workforce is already receiving within their schooling when they go to when they're working on their units. This should be things that are already included and just shouldn't be add-ons. And thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am a family child care provider. I'm also a credentialed teacher prior to. And today I'd like to say that the previous experience of a participant as a family child care home licensee should be honored and accounted for as experience, field experience, clinical practice, and practicum within the PK3 credential and child development permit. Given the workforce shortage, ignoring this workforce already embedded within the ECE field is short-sighted. Clear pathways for experienced family child care home educators should be created as the quickest and most efficient way to fill the state's need. Thank you.
A microphone and share your comment.
Hello, my name is Tessie Reagan. I am a family child care educator. And as a family child care educator who is military connected, I had came here from Maryland. I also operated in Germany. I have a bachelor's in birth kindergarten education and a master's in ECE. And when I tried to get my teaching certification here, I was told I would have to go to school again because my experience as a family child care educator was not respected and because I got my education out of state. So it frustrates me greatly when I hear that we're talking about the fact that there are reciprocal ways for people like me who cannot afford to go back to school for another degree for us that actually teach in the state of California. I also wanted to teach TK and I did not have a pathway to do that. I currently run a home as a family child care educator as an early ed, 3 to 5 years old. And now I might not be able to continue my business the way that it's structured. And I still won't be able to get a job as a TK teacher because of the fact that there are roadblocks in the way at the credentialing level. My education, my experience, and all of the things that I have done in my career are not just in a silo. There are many like me who were military connected or were educated out of state due to being connected to the military and do not have the access to become a credentialed teacher in California. And if we do not provide those pathways, we are not actually being equitable and we are actually throwing up more roadblocks in making sure we have a well-educated ECE system.
No additional requests.
Public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Mr. Frenzel.
First, I want to thank you for this. It was very exciting to read. I too agree that we need to have rigorous pathways, actually, even more so for our youngest learners. I appreciate you thinking about infant toddler, leaning into bilingual as well as special education. So I love where we are now and how we're going. So in theory, I actually agree with everything on the paper, but I also have some questions because as we sat at this table over the years, we've talked about this particular field being a model for diversity in the educator workforce, as well as retention over time in high needs community. And so I'm always questioning what were the conversations? Did we learn anything from other states who have similar pathways and similar requirements for their educators and the impact of those on diversity and retention? Or are we pioneering this and there are no other states that have, pathways?
I'm not sure if we can directly because I'm thinking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so in terms of the work group, we didn't address what other states are doing. We have done a little bit of background work in relationship to that because of the unique situation that California educators are in, and what our requirements are. Every state is diverse, and we are not aware of other states that are offering specialization areas. So, but that doesn't mean that they don't exist, but that's something we can further research.
Do you have any information about, maybe not the specialization area, but additional coursework, like modifications to increase the rigor of pathways and how that impacts diversity and retention?
We have been working directly with the CAP program and talking with Jen Milovich, talking about the coursework that's available there. We've also been looking at the CID and looking at the coursework that's available within that system for transferring. I'm trying to think what other pieces related to curriculum.
I believe we're one of 11 states that do not require a bachelor's degree. So we are not on the higher end, but probably, looking at advancing towards that. Yeah.
I just want to caution us that we have to have both of those conversations. Increasing pipeline, increasing pathways, increasing rigor, preparation of the folks coming into and who are going up the career ladder within their particular field, while also thinking about how it affects diversity, how it affects retention, and does it create additional barriers into entry? Because one of the things that I would hate to see happen is we put all of this work, time, and investment, and the shape and complexion and all of that of our workforce begins to decline. And what was once a model for some of our state priorities then becomes, not that one. The other question that I have is, in terms of equivalency, I really heard the last speaker's concern and passion around out-of-state candidates coming in with a lot of experience, maybe a lot of coursework, but not getting full credit for that and then having to go back to school. That's exactly the candidate that I was talking about in my previous report. Was there any talk about how we might credit some of that so that we could get those folks into the pipeline without, we call them at the university equivalent, without them having to go and repeat what they've already studied and learned or experienced?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're looking at and bringing back to the commission is the alternative pathway topic that would include expansion of other pathways of those obtaining the permit. And so, again, there's work that the commission has done in terms of out of state when it relates to credentialing. So that's something that we would have to work in tandem with, but really examining what those alternative pathways, what those might look like in the future.
Also, the concern on the clinical practice piece, it is a question about the child development permit, but it's also a discussion about the PK3 credentials. So that's one of the challenges, is some of the conversations that are elevated actually are kind of between two pieces and not just the one piece of the project related to ECE teacher preparation. I absolutely believe that we need to have continued conversation about this. We want to streamline the process as much as possible. We don't want these highly qualified people like Tessie to not be able to be in our system, because it's so there is more work to be done. But at this, and just to put it in perspective, like, as you know, the regulatory process is a long process where there'll be lots of opportunities for additional public comment, additional thinking deeper in the spaces that we need to. We really will be, I hope everybody will get used to this because we're coming up with quite a few agenda items in the next year related to this exact project. So the conversation has started. Yes, there is more conversation to be by all means. I also want to go back to your previous comment, if that's okay. Just want to reflect for just a moment on school age. Perfect example is there's a heightened kind of energy right now where people think that school age is somehow going to lock people out. Let's look at how school age is right now. Let's look at the list of exemptions. Let's look at how many groups actually require their employees to hold a school age permit, you know, in terms of an employability condition. We are going to try to look at keeping it in a similar way. So that way it doesn't stop people from that piece of the profession. It just enhances their development. And one sample to share, I was faculty for a long time in my career. It is possible that somebody can go through and get an AA degree at my college that I taught at and not have one class that focuses on children that are older than 8 years old. So then if they end up in expanded learning, you're working with up to 12-year-olds, and all of us know a third grader is totally different than a sixth grader in terms of what, so it's important to know too, I think there's a perception that throughout all of the curriculum, all of this is embedded. Those people would be in school for like 10 years if every single piece of this was embedded in every single piece of the curriculum. You know, like for instance, if I'm teaching a child development course, you know, an intro class that includes a piece of infant toddler, that class could be 16 weeks long. The infant toddler portion could be one lecture in 1 week of the 16. By all means, you try to embed as much as possible, but when you're trying to cover a large breadth of content, these specialized areas get some attention, but do they get the level of attention that those teachers need to be in a classroom? Anybody who's had an infant in their care in any way, would 3 units prepare you for that? And what you learn, I mean, you know, so there's questions here to make sure that the quality and the access are coming together, because we don't want to block people. That is the last thing. And I shouldn't say we, because this is not Debbie and Renee and Bronwyn. This is the Child Development Permit Workgroup, and we're expressing what that year-long group of experts brought to the table and said, here's what we think needs to move forward. So please make sure anytime I say we, it's the work group that we had the opportunity to work.
I appreciate that. I appreciate the wanting to align this pathway with the and thinking about K3 and thinking about school age and what's the basic. I don't even see the minimum, but what should we all understand about K6 or K before entry or as we move up? And I also think, you know, we would hope that teaching is a career that lasts from preparation to induction, through professional learning, through national boards, through retirement. And so, and this isn't conversation for right now, but you're also making an argument for why we need to lean into some kind of micro certification so folks can go deeper on some of these, but not on everything. Because my fear is that we're going to keep on putting requirements on top of requirement, and we won't have a teaching pool. Because I can tell you, I wouldn't do it.
They're gonna share.
Yeah, I think
Simmons. Sorry, GS.
no, I'm done.
I appreciate the reminder from Commissioner Francois about the developmental nature of this profession. So thank you. Thank you for this report. Given the public comments regarding the additional authorization, I see in the agenda item that this is an area for further development in terms of bilingual education and special education. You give us a little bit more information about what conversations have occurred in the work group among staff regarding how we meet the needs of our littles, as you like to say, or bilingual children, as well as those with special needs.
Yeah, so we heard very clearly and directly from the CDP work group that they were very interested in these specialized areas, particularly bilingual was really at the top of the list. in addition to special education. And so it was very organic conversation where we looked at the current TPEs and where are these areas embedded within our current ECE TPEs. And each one of these areas are addressed within our current TPEs. But the concern of the work group was, is it addressed at the level like Renee referred to in an area that could provide not just that base level of understanding, but that higher level of expertise within that area. And so we looked at that as a work group. We also, because of the specialization idea being elevated, we had formulated ad hoc committees, which I oversaw 4 of them, actually 5 with the TPEs as well. And we had lots of conversations about looking at the TPEs and their comfort level with each one of these areas being addressed within our teaching performance expectations, but then understanding there is a next level. And because of Title 22 requirements for those, there are many exceptions for school age, but for those that are provide services to infant toddler and are licensed, which are all programs, they do require that 3 units of infant toddler with that. So realizing that there is a formal structure in place within requirements, and programs do set those requirements. So I want to point that out, that as a commission in approving these special education, that, you know, for school age, that you would have to have that in order to work in a school age program. There are a list of exemptions. Anyone actually that has any level of the permit would be authorized to work in school age, although the preparation might not be there. And for infant toddler, as long as you have that course on a transcript, that is acceptable, you know, as per licensing. So really looking at the breadth of that, and the ad hoc committee really going a little bit deeper, you know, with that. And so there was a lot of conversation at the work group level in terms of that. And two, commission staff having conversations about what is why change it from specialization to authorization, because it's more of that higher level of authorizing. Although in our ECE world, programs that set what those requirements are. So there's a lot of interplay between the two.
So
sorry, may I
be
ask
clear,
that, please?
So just so that I understand, so there are plans to.
Yes, absolutely.
That sentence.
Yeah, sorry about that. So for bilingual and special education, we, because of transitioning to authorization, we want to be sure that we have a very clear vision, you know, with commission staff about what an authorization would do in those 2 specific areas and how that relates to existing credentials and existing pathways that the commission offers. And we want to be very thoughtful about that and hearing from our field too as well.
That was, Debbie just sort of alluded to the thing that I wanted to point out, which is one of the things that we need to consider before staff brings a recommendation to you is that we have an existing bilingual added authorization, and we have an existing early childhood special education credential. So what would be the appropriate level of preparation in child development that would then also not cause tension between those existing authorizations? Because the bilingual added authorization right now allows for somebody with a child development permit at the teacher level or higher to add it. So that counts as a base credential. But, you know, that level of preparation, when people are talking about, you know, the difference here for infant toddler of an additional 6 units and that being a little bit of a pressure, an added authorization bilingual program is going to be more than 6 units. Plus they have that 20 hours of clinical practice now with the new standards. So I will point out that the team did reach out to our wonderful, amazing colleagues at CABE to have some conversations with them about what this might look like. So it just needs more fleshing out from us before we bring something to you and to the public.
So then we'll look forward to that conversation. We'll all have gathered that in. Thank you.
Go ahead, Commissioner Simmons. Next.
Okay, I am really uncomfortable with this item. So in all of work groups work, I have been driven by really two things. I'm representing human resources, so that's my job. One of the things that I have been concerned with is that the workforce can be supported by state funding. ELOP, just in my district, our state funding this year dropped from $2,378,000 to $2,119,000. It is an unstable funding source. I do really not want to start hiring certificated people into that world. Right now, there is no funding requirement that ELOP hire certificated people. It's largely the review of classified people. So I feel like we're really going beyond what I thought the purview of the work group was. My other interest is really about protecting the three options in Bill 48,000E. But that doesn't apply to what we're talking about today. When we spoke really at even the beginning of the work group, one of my concerns was that we have someone who has expertise in finance that is actually responsible for district level budget, giving input to the work group. So my question is, who is it on the panel, on the work group, that has that kind of lens so that they can be looking at it? Because I gotta tell you, I'm looking at increases in state preschool. There's other ways I can spend the money other than on preschool. We can put the money into TK. We can put the money into ELOP. There's other places where that money can go if the workforce is too expensive for the state to fund it. You know, the other piece, I mean, my other question is, if we're talking about taking all of the workers in ELOP around the state and putting them under the commission's purview, does the commission's budget allow for that? Has anybody looked at the fiscal impact on the commission before we go and take on something like that? So I kind of think that, and at least with regard to the ELOP portion, we don't have enough information to be able to come up with a approval.
Director Sandy would like that.
So I'd like to jump in here. I've been looking for where the statutes or regulations that we live within direct that somebody who's working with school-age children hold any kind of preparation or have completed any kind of units. And there, I'm finding something in Title 22 that says to be a teacher in after-school care, they need to have at least 6 units or an assistant teacher permit. But this is my scan of statute and regulation right now on this question. The commission has for decades issued a school-age permit that was an add-on to the child development permit. Under different funding sources, ACES and other different funding formulas, there was an expectation that someone have this preparation, whether they're having units. Having units doesn't necessarily, I'm talking to an HR professional, so correct me if I'm wrong. Holding 6 units of preparation in this area doesn't necessarily make you certificated, but holding a child development permit with those 6 units does make you certificated.
Under ACES, you do not have to have any certificated people involved.
Right, but does somebody who works with these students in after-school care, according to what I'm looking at in Title 22, that does,
no requirement under ACES funding. There's no requirement under ELOP funding. And what is the third one that's blanking on me? The other big source of funding that we use, there's not a requirement under any of them.
So it might not be in the funding requirement, but there is a requirement in Title 22 state regulations that, and what I think may be useful here, because I think we really have to get to clarity. This is not an attempt, certainly on the staff's part, and I don't think that the work group ever contemplated this is the CTC is going to take this over and certificate all these staff. That's not the goal here. But I believe the goal was at a minimum to take a look at the existing child development permit system, which includes a school age permit and has for decades, that has been required of, and there's statute and regulation that has required it. And so this was an attempt to update that based on the emerging funding and expectations for extended learning in schools. So I think that it's this particular question is ripe for a return to discussion about, what requirements are required by whom. Title 22 licenses facility that provide services primarily, and those license, and I'm, talking about things that the team at the other end of the table know a lot more about, and we don't necessarily have to dig into that right now if you'd like us to bring this back with further analysis. But it does seem to me that there are also some options that have come out in the questions and comments from the field on this, and as well from commissioners here, that the base permit that you adopted at the last commission meeting requires a teacher, the journey level teacher in the child development permit system to have an AA degree or 24 units and working toward the AA degree. So the question is the AA degree all focused on core child development coursework where you'd need to add 6 units of school age or add 6 units of infant toddler? Could those units be included in that core base, or is it big enough to hold? Is an AA big enough to hold all the things you need to do and be able to do work 0 to 8 or 12, depending on who you're serving in ELOP? That's, I think, is that there's an essential question there about whether there's a bottleneck because you've got somebody who has a child development permit, but without the ELOP authorization or the infant toddler. What do you do then? You have to get that for them in some way, and that is a pressure on employers. So I think it's a question about how do we make sure that whatever we require for this child development permit, they are able to provide the services necessary in a birth through 8 or 12 context, given that that's where some funding programs require you to be permitted or certificated.
I think I also had, there anything further, Commissioner Simmons? Did you want to respond to that?
I don't think that we're in a position where that we have all the necessary information to make a decision, at least on the second one.
On the ELOP?
The ELOP one.
I know I have Commissioner Brown, Commissioner Cotton, and then Commissioner Brown. So this Commissioner Brown, am I right?
What we're talking about now has a lot to do with what do you want people to know how to do to work with children? And the permit's been at the commission since 1995, but it isn't a credential. And so one of the things that I keep hearing is this piece about what's the permit, what's the credential, and the credential isn't, the permit isn't a credential. It's not even required for an associate degree. But one of the things that's really great, I have to say this, about the community college system is A, it's affordable, B, it's accessible, and C, it's at the lower division level. So it doesn't require a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or going to a graduate school of education for 5 to 10 years. So that's why the child development permit, at least as I know it when I came on 10 years ago, really was the only thing that was a professional, was establishing professional standards for people that work with children and don't have a teaching credential. They don't have a teaching credential. But how do they learn how to teach? One of the things I'm hearing, that I heard on the work group, was that issue around what did people need to know and be able to do, that similarly to a credential, you have a base. And then if you want additional, whatever you want to call it, we'll call it authorization, then you know something that is really important to know for those people, like bilingual, like special ed, like infant toddler, like school age. School age was built into the child development permit. Additionally, I noticed the numbers are always really small. right? Because the system that takes care of, that educates children before and after school doesn't require it, doesn't pay for it, doesn't have a funding source, and therefore can't say, oh, you better know more about this age group. And the person says, but I can't afford it, don't need it, I'm not going to go get it. And certainly at many of the community colleges that often offered school age courses, used to be called specialization, people didn't sign up for them. You only needed a high school, you didn't even need to finish high school to work in a school age program. So the question might also be not just funding, but take a step back. Do we think those children need to be taught by people who know something about them? Now, I'm not just talking about experience, I'm talking about knowledge and skills. And if that's the case, then I think one of the things that as a member of the work group that I heard was, yes, and let's see how we can align this to make professional sense to everyone, whether or not you were working with children in a child development permit world, or we're working with students in a elementary school and so the work group really did try to take that and say, here's the base. If you're working with toddlers, probably ought to know something else. The thing that I think is amazing about what we're doing here is that's Title 22. That's the Department of Social Services about a program, not about their teachers. And yet we recognize that the Department of Social Services, even then, said, at least if you're working with little ones, you ought to have 3 units. So that kind of overlapped the community colleges who were offering 6 units of specialization. So one of the people that talked here, I thought to myself, there were multiple challenges that particular person had, but one of them was, if I've already taken the 3 units, wouldn't that count? Well, that's the next step out. Once we decide what it's needed, then we have to figure out how it gets addressed. And this idea of equivalency that you call is really makes sense. Because what we don't want to do is to try to establish a system that no one can afford and get to and can get, then that's not going to help our programs. I keep looking at you because you have one of those where you have to figure out how do we staff that the people that matter most is our children are being taught, supported, cared for by people that know what they're doing. And that part, I can't speak to the finances, but certainly that's what the credential system tries to do, is establish standards and then pay them for it. So I think that's what the Child Development Permit Group was trying to do, was look at those standards. And then once we get them set, yeah, they have to be paid for.
Sure, Kyle.
I think that Anne-Marie was moving into a conversation, but I just wanted to put it back out there again and just make it really plain. For the team, I'm wondering if you could talk to me about grandfathering options with this authorization. But we, in agreement, what we don't want to see is a lack of or a loss of those who are doing this work, have been doing this work and doing it well, because they don't have the new authorizations, they don't have this new in place for them. And then we have a question around kind of what does that coursework look like? So additional coursework that's coming, exactly does that, I don't think you give me an exactly, but what has the group talked about and where is that going in terms of what courses would be required? And then we also, I'd like to hear more about the timelines because it's the major shift. A major shift. It feels major. It feels like a rationing up of the expectations and the rigor around becoming an educator, both for infants and toddlers, as well as school-age children. And with that, what does that getting on board and taking off process like? It would be very helpful for E, for our early ed, to just be able to talk to folks about, but then also for the field, really understanding what happens during our, we've already been working, what happens, the current permit holder, and then also what does the coursework look like, and then what's the timeline for
Okay, so a couple things here. First off, I want to just share that anybody who has a current permit, that they will be allowed to keep that permit unless they advance. Once the new regulations go through to a higher level permit, at that point, they would need to make a switch over. But so people aren't losing like their current permits that they have. I also want to make note, when we're talking about the authorizations, they don't currently exist on the system outside of the school age version. And so in terms of the equivalencies and the grant, I'm wondering within the work group, do we talk about that component of it? Because it wasn't like there were certain pieces that were grandfathered in for the structure of the matrix, but in terms of the specializations.
the current school age emphasis is a part of the current CDP structure. So in essence, anyone that's obtaining a child development permit has the ability to be able to also obtain the school age emphasis up until the time that our new permit structure has gone through the regulatory process. So that is available, and anyone that earns that will continue to be able to renew under the existing child development permit structure. And then for infant toddler, for infant toddler, there currently is not an authorization. It is a Title 22 requirement. Anyone with toddlers needs that 3 units in infant toddler development in order to be able to work in those spaces. And that applies to teacher level, administration level that currently exists. So this is a complement to that. It is not an additional requirement. That is run by licensing, double check transcripts, etc.
In terms of the coursework too, we wanted to share, as I mentioned earlier, we've talked with CAP about what has already been created and then kind of what's in the works. Because that would be another thing too, to note, in terms of the programs that are going to be offering these options, for them to get curriculum passed, if there is a need for new curriculum, that's about a year-long process before it can even be on their books. So in terms of timeline, we've still got some time. Okay, when you hear say, another 2 to 3 years, like we've still got a few more years to go before the full rollout, happens. But I do want to share in our conversations with CAP, there are already some of the courses that are developed as extension courses, but not all the colleges offer them. So that's one piece of this too. There's a good amount that are offering, but there will be some opportunity for colleges to add some additional curriculum or to take a curriculum that was maybe archived and bring it back. And a perfect example of that is school age courses. The 2 school age courses have not had enough people enrolling. And so you've seen a drop in those over the years. And so many colleges stopped offering them, but they keep them archived. So you can reawaken them in a sense and bring them back, modernize them with, especially everything that's gone on with the billions of dollars that have been invested in the ELOP. And so there's good momentum and opportunity within the infant toddler space, within the special ed space, within the expanded learning space. Now, in terms of the bilingual authorization, there will be some need to do some more work there in terms of development, but there is an interest. And as you can see by the, some of the letters of support we've received and some of the comments we've received throughout the whole process really of the child development work group, there's been a push for having more bilingual resources and stronger bilingual educators in the preschool space. So in terms of the need for more course development there, in our conversations, there hasn't been opposition. It's just a matter of we need to figure out the resources and make it work. And by all means, I'm saying that it's like a very small thing. It's a very big thing. But at the same time, there's the idea that this is feasible in terms of the curriculum piece of it. And we've had continued conversations with the CAP program and with June Milovich and Mary, just to make sure that we continue making sure that I've been out of the classroom, out of the college classroom for a little while. So, it's really important that we know what's happening right this moment with curriculum within that system and within the other systems, of course, as well. Also with the community college system, I think they permit something like 80+%. And so that's one of the reasons why we're having conversations with CAP. We're looking at the CID, trying to make sure there's as much alignment as possible there. But going to the people who are the experts in it, like Jen Milovich has been leading CAP for, I don't even know how long, forever at this point. And so she is the leader in the state, her and Mary, of curriculum in this space.
And I just, so to clarify, CAP, Curriculum Alignment Project, that is at the community college level, system-wide, so that those courses, the core courses are accepted as the associate teacher at the associate degree and also the certificate level. And so the additional courses in the curriculum alignment project, what's so great about that for the community college system is that any individual college doesn't have to say, oh, we need to start from scratch. It's like, oh, we could be part of the curriculum alignment project and look at that course or courses that the entire 122 colleges then can access and offer, and it's affordable and available. And it's in your local neighborhood, and it's usually offered online, hybrid, different modalities.
Go ahead, Commissioner Brown.
Clarify.
And then Commissioner Cruz and Chair Gunnershire.
Thank you. Thank you for this item. I always appreciate your passion and enthusiasm. I want to kind of share my train of thought, because what I was going to say when this started is not where I'm at right now. So I started by thinking, why would we postpone the bilingual piece when we've heard at so many meetings how critical that is, especially for our dual language learners? But that got answered along the way. But then this little seed, started to sprout, and it led me to more questions. So then during the presentation, when you were talking about the ELOP piece specifically, I see in the agenda item, and you come to, so ELOP we know is before school, after school, summer, which sort of stood out in bold letters in my mind. And as I was processing and making meaning, I thought, oh, here's another question. So would that mean this person could teach summer school? Because many of our summer school programs are funded by ELOP. And then I started asking more questions in my own mind during the course of this. And so it's not important to answer that question because I have more. I ended up somewhere else. Because then I thought, ooh, if you could teach summer school, then maybe other educational partners might have some serious thoughts about that. Do you know what I mean? And so then that led me to think about, well, so who has been involved in this conversation? And then I was listening to, just as it developed, about the continued conversations of the CDP permit work group. And I heard things like, within the work group, we've been talking about this. The work group discussed this. The ad hoc committees did this, which is phenomenal. I appreciate their work. But going back to my questions about, so could they teach summer school? Could they do this? And going to Commissioner Simmons' point about, and funding and the LEAs, I just got to the point where I thought, maybe we need some continued conversations where we bring in more of our educational partners to talk about what does this mean and what might the impact be. Because I think some of those things for me are the unknown pieces that make me uncomfortable with moving forward. So I think that I would like to recommend some outreach and some maybe more flushed out, what would this person be able to do? Because I don't feel like I know what I need to know to make an informed decision. And I don't think we know how it might impact LEAs, how CTA might feel about it if they can teach summer school. I just feel like there are more broad conversations that if we had those, we would come to a more settled place and everyone would be a part of that and we would know the considerations from many aspects. I think it would be stronger. So while I appreciate the effort and the idea of added authorizations, I think that's an intriguing idea that I support. I don't know that we're at a place, or I don't feel comfortable taking action on something that I have so many big questions when I haven't heard that all of our educational partners have had an opportunity to kind of chew on it and then give you feedback about, here are some things you might consider, and then coming back. So that was my pathway of my thoughts, and that's where I'm at right now.
I appreciate that. And we wanted to just share briefly on the ad hoc committees. Well, actually, let me rewind. When we brought these topics up to the work group, we had experts come in to present the information so that way it would be unbiased. And when there were certain groups, like for instance, right away we went to CDE, do you want to do the piece on ELOP? And they're like, well, so we brought in Woodcraft Rangers, who's one of the leaders of ELOP in Southern California. We checked with CDE, do you mind if Woodcraft come in? Oh, Woodcraft would be great, because there's some major ELOP players or intermediary groups throughout the state. And so I wanted to just share within that, there was expertise that came and shared to the group. And then we broke into the ad hocs. And in order to be in the ad hocs, it was the intention that you have some specialization in this area that you're going to be jumping into. And so within the ad hocs, we then did another analysis of what we learned from the contingency groups that came in. So I just wanted to make sure that we shared that, so you know that that was embedded. So when we say ad hoc, there were experts from different groups that were coming in as well on that. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think I want to emphasize that this is not a requirement for ELOP. ELOP has its own requirements for their programs and who can work in those spaces. So this authorization would not limit that. They would continue to operate based upon, their own requirements, and they don't require a permit at this time. So I just want to, reemphasize that. I think that's important to state. It's not tied to funding in terms of that or anything. It's just that added level of expertise for those that choose, that want to get that.
Clarification, Commissioner Cruz.
Yeah, so just piggybacking on that, there's no requirement right now. I guess the question is, why do we do this? Other than trying to make sure that we have highly qualified staff that are working with their students. And I think that's always our kind of balance, right? Trying to make sure that we have highly qualified people that are working with children and not making it so difficult that then we have an issue with our workforce. And so to me, I just, one of the things that I'd like to be able to have brought back when we're ready to maybe take some action is some analysis on the impact. What if we were to do this, who would be impacted? Who currently requires this authorization? Would this be then the path to eventually have this requirement for anybody that is an extended learning opportunity? Because then that would be a big issue. Right now, that is not the case. The only thing that they're required to do is have the same qualifications that our paraeducators have, which is all about content and not about anything else. And so I think part of this is, if it's not required under ELOP, it's currently what I'm hearing is not even required in most cases, and most people are not taking it. Colleges have stopped offering these courses. Then why are we doing it? Is I guess the question that's struggling with. And then what are the unintended consequences of an action like this? Who would be impacted moving forward?
I think Executive Director Daddy wants to.
Actually, I'm going to defer to Shire.
But before I make my comment, Erin, did you want to say something?
She go first.
Okay. So collegial and collaborative in this group. So I'm not going to share my thought train with you. But what is really clear is this commission chews on these topics and takes these agenda items so seriously. And this conversation over the last half hour or so has really been illustrative of that. And so I thank my colleagues for raising these really important questions, and of course thank the staff for bringing the agenda item before us. Given the questions that have been raised and additional considerations, I don't think we're ready to move forward with this as an action item. So I would ask, what is the mechanism? What's the step? Maybe I can continue that.
Absolutely. So essentially, this is part 2 of multiple parts of bringing the recommendations of the work group you for discussion. And the issues that you're surfacing here and that the field is bringing to our attention are the reason for having a public discussion of this. I agree with you. This is not right for movement today based on the need for more information and answers to some fundamental questions that, thank you, Commissioner Cruz, for surfacing them. Commissioner Simmons also, all of you have put issues on the table that need a little bit more grounding in order for you to have a launch pad for deciding which way to go. So, so what we would like to do is take the fruits of this discussion and have further discussions with the field to talk about how what is the best path to meet the current laws and current regulations related to any of the emphasis areas that were identified by the work group, so that we can put those in that context of what is legally required by statute or regulation, and how do we find the sweet spot of meeting those expectations without creating bottlenecks. And as we all know, the perfect can be the enemy of the good. And, you know, our goal will be to find that sweet spot and some options for you to consider of how to move forward with these particular areas of specialization at a future meeting. And I'm not going to promise it's June, but sometime in the year of 2025, year of our Lord 2025, we'll be back. Okay? If that works.
I don't know if we want to have her in at this point in time.
Next time.
Is there any further discussion? I think we've had plenty of discussion. This has now become an information item. And we look forward to coming back and reconvening and having more information regarding this item. I just want to say thank you very much to this fruitful conversation. Also for community also engaging with this conversation. I think there's a lot of work that's been done behind the scenes, and people have really had a lot of thoughts behind this. Being here at this point in time, we'll go ahead and just keep it an information item. We'll come back to this at a later date. So again, thank you, Ms. Marshall. Thank you, Dr. Keeler, and thank you, Ms. Kennedy. Thank you so much.
We look forward to the continued discussion, everybody. We appreciate the opportunity to talk today. Thank you so much. And we look forward to engaging with the field more and coming back. Like I said, you're going to see our team a lot this year. So thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate you.